The mist was so powerful that it not only blocked the attack but also shattered it and began advancing towards him. While Huang Yongkao was flying in the air, the poisonous mist approached him. While holding the bow with one hand, he started looking around, and upon seeing poison, he couldn't help but panic since he had been told that Zhang was of the life type. With a look full of fear, he asked others not to hide and to come attack altogether. Just before he could finish speaking, Little Nine's poisonous mist reached him and impacted his body, corroding and tearing him into pieces, causing him to start screaming in agony. The poisonous mist grew larger and the insects began to devour his body. His companions turned their backs on him and started to flee out of fear. They did not want to fight against a guy who had awakened the hidden poison class. Now that even long-range shooters like Huang Yongkao had not been able to deal with him, much less would those who had close combat classes be able to. They thought they were lucky since they escaped in time. Otherwise, they would have been cannon fodder. In a matter of seconds, the insects began to devour Huang Yongkao's body. Zhang, who was standing next to him, was controlling the swarm of insects. At the same time, in the observation room were Yang Guang and Gu Kaishan watching everything that was happening in the camp through some cameras. Gu Kaishan started to look at Zhang, and seeing how strong he was, he couldn't help but praise him upon noticing that he not only had the creation class, but also had the poison class. Yang Guang, who was standing behind him, was speechless. With a surprised look, he began to wonder how it was possible that Zhang had killed so quickly a second transformation prodigy. For him, Zhang Chen was incredible. He didn't know why the city's night watch hadn't reported anything. While he was deep in his thoughts, Gokaishin turned his head towards him, and with a serious look asked him to go inform the others, and also bring some great masters of the spatial system since this was an emergency moment. They needed transfer at any time to prevent Zhang from killing too many people. Hearing his voice, Yang Guang snapped out of his trance and responded affirmatively, deciding to go inform immediately. He turned his back on him, started running, clenched his teeth tightly, and with a worried look decided to take advantage of the fact that the elder had not changed his mind to leave quickly, because if the prodigies really began a massacre, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Gu Kaishin put his hand under his chin, started observing Zhang, and coughed to get Yang Guang's attention. Upon hearing his voice, he stopped running, turned around with a surprised look and asked if there was any problem. Deep down, he didn't know if this old man was regretting all of this. Gu Kaishin put his hand under his chin, started looking at the ceiling with a lost gaze, and asked him to bring 10 third-level ferocious beasts and release them separately. He also gave the order to place the advance flag on the ferocious beasts. Yang Guang turned around, gave a military salute, and with a confused look responded with an understood. He couldn't help but be somewhat impressed since the move the old man had just made was astonishing, because in this way, those demons could go first to fight for the advance flag and avoid harming others. At the same time, Tang Yin Baifeng and Xiao Baiheng surrounded Wu Shuang. The three drew their weapons and prepared to attack, while on the other side he crossed his arms. Baifeng had been fighting against him for several minutes and was quite tired. He put his hand on his chest where he had the wound and began to pant heavily. Wu Shuang started looking at him and reminded them again that even if they joined forces, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. He didn't know if they really wanted to die. He mocked them by asking if they would feel proud after winning in a 1-against-3 fight. Xiao Baiyang gripped the sword tightly, causing the blade to start emitting a powerful blue energy. He began to stare intently at him and explained that although it was dishonorable to win with superior numbers, he couldn't avoid fighting people who weren't boring. At that moment, the loudspeaker started to sound and notified everyone that Huang Yongqiao had been eliminated by Zhang Cheng. Upon hearing this, everyone was in shock as they couldn't believe Zhang had made the first kill. Unlike the others, Wu Shuang remained calm. With a worried look, Xiao Baiheng thought that although Huang Yongqiao had average strength, at least he was good and was in the second transformation. In this camp full of geniuses, he was among the top 50. He was much stronger than Xiao Yuanwu, and yet had been killed in the blink of an eye. Tang Ying, who was holding several knives with her fingers, With a terrified look, she thought that this was not good since her aunt had told her that Zhang was only level 26 of the creation class. She did not know how he, a person of level 26, could have instantly killed a person of level 39 from the combat class. Not even she, an assassin, could have killed Huang Yongqiao so quickly. Bai Heng started looking towards the sky and with a smile came to the conclusion that this time the Tanjiao camp was full of hidden talents. Wu Shuang brought his hand to his face, started looking at them and with a smile asked if they were not going to face an expert like Zhang. They ignored him and prepared to attack again. But just before they could make a move, the camp notified everyone that 10 third-level fierce beasts were going to be released, and each one was going to have an advancement flag. Everyone who possessed the advancement flag would get an additional score in the ranking. All those who were among the top 10 would receive a reward, with the first-place reward being 100 million. Upon hearing this, Xiao Baiheng and the others jumped and moved away from the area. Wu Shuang, who had his arms crossed, began to smile. Once everyone left, he stood still and thought that the King of Celestial Sword had given them new toys. He thought this was fine and decided to compete for and seize the blue flag. At the same time, Jiang started to look to one side and couldn't help but be surprised when he remembered that they had just entered the camp and the first place was already going to receive a reward of 100 million. For him, this prodigy camp was too generous. If he took first place and obtained the rewards and resources, the insects would be able to reproduce faster again. At that moment, something giant began to fall from the sky. Jiang, who wasn't far away, went on alert and started wondering what this was. A giant mutant beast in the shape of a wolf fell from the sky and landed near Jiang. Lu Sando, who was next to him, explained that the first fierce beast had fallen beside them. Jiang began to look at the beast with a confused gaze and realized that this was a third-level beast. Lu Hengqiu, who was nearby, panicked and asked everyone to be careful since the strength of this beast was equivalent to a level 90 awakened. Little by little, the beast started to stand up. Lu Sando looked with some attention and she realized that it was in a state of paralysis. She asked him if they should take advantage of this situation. While little by little the beast was getting to its feet and regaining consciousness, Jiang began to advance towards it and prepared to attack, making his hands start to release the poisonous mist. He decided to take advantage of this and asked the others to move away. He prepared to attack, but at that moment someone launched a powerful slash towards him. However, he reacted in time, jumped and dodged the attack at the last second. He couldn't help but feel somewhat confused as he didn't know who had launched this attack. Several seconds later, he landed on the ground, clenched his fist tightly and began to wonder what was happening. The person who had launched the attack was Xiao Baihan. He was standing on top of the beast's head and holding the sword with one hand. He began to stare at Zhang and with a smile thought that not only had he killed Huang Yongqiao in a second, but now he dared to steal the advanced flag. Zhang extended his hand towards him, releasing Little Nine's poisonous mist and asked him if he was going to fight, then stop all this talk. Xiao Baihan jumped and used the technique called Heaven and Earth Wind Dragon Slash. He launched a powerful slash towards him, which started destroying everything in its path. His attack collided with Zhang's, causing the poisonous mist to start disappearing. He positioned himself on top of the beast's head, and while his sword was surrounded by a powerful energy, he thought it was no wonder that Zhang was so arrogant, since it turned out that he had the hidden poison type. It was said that the poison type was difficult to handle, but in front of his sword's wind, it amounted to nothing. Wu Hengqiu clashed her fist with her palm, started looking at him, and with a serious look thought that Zhang was in danger since the wind could face and defeat the poison type. She thought they should help him as soon as possible. Lu Sandao, who was next to her, started looking at her with a surprised look and explained to her that Zhang's poison wasn't an ordinary poison. If they went to help, all they would do is cause more problems. Zhang adopted an offensive stance, and while his body was surrounded by poison, he began to stare intently at Xiao Baihan and decided it was time to end this. He used the technique called Poisonous Mist Dragon, causing a giant dragon made of poison to appear. It opened its mouth and prepared to attack, seeing the size of the dragon. Xiao Baihan couldn't help but panic and think that this wasn't good. He decided not to stand idly by, grabbed the sword firmly, brought his fingers close to the blade of the sword, and realizing that this poisonous mist was not going to disperse with a strike, decided to absorb it. The dragon opened its mouth and prepared to attack. He extended the sword towards the sky and used the technique forbidden spell called Immortal Swordsman of Blue Lotus, causing a giant flower to appear behind him. The giant flower began to absorb the poison dragon. He asked him to watch how his sword's energy was going to consume all of his poisonous mist. While Jiang's eyes were shining, he started to smile and asked if he was serious. With his sword energy blocking the view, it was even easier to swallow. Little Nine manifested herself. She closed her eyes, opened her mouth, and began to consume the flower that Xiaobahan had created. For her, this sword energy was very delicious. Thanks to this, Zheng gained 2,000 devouring value. He started looking at Little Nine and thought she was eating the whole flower. He reached out his hand towards the sky, and in the blink of an eye, the flower that Xiaobahan had created broke into pieces, releasing poisonous mist. The poisonous mist attacked Xiaobahan, causing his body to be thrown backward and crash into the ground. He opened his mouth and began to scream in pain. Jiang clenched both fists tightly, and now that Little Nine had consumed the energy of the flower, the poison dragon became even bigger and more terrifying. Xiaobahan fell to the ground, grabbed the sword with one hand, and thought this was not possible. He did not know what kind of poison could annihilate a sword's energy. Jiang attacked him using the poison dragon, but just before the attack could impact against him, he hugged himself and used the life gem, causing a barrier to appear around his body. He took the sword, stood up, and seeing that his poison couldn't break through the life gem's shield, he thought Jiang was doomed to die. He started looking at him and thought that the Xiaobahan family really had second chances, but it was a pity because in this battlefield there were cameras everywhere, and he couldn't let the insects reveal their true form. He turned his head to one side where Lu Sando was in with a calm look, asked if she could create an opaque earth shield that covered the entire place. She clenched both fists tightly and told him that she would try. She extended her hands towards the sky, causing her energy to start advancing towards the sky. She used the technique called Earth Protection Shield Cover. By doing this, a shield was created around the area. Xiaobahan started to look towards the sky with a confused look and asked him what he was doing. Lu Sando put both hands on her knees, lowered her head, and began to pant heavily as she had used a lot of energy to create the shield. While Jiang's hand was releasing the poisonous mist from Little Nine, he started looking at him and asked if he could guess how Xiaoyu and Lu Sando were doing.